Testing, testing. Hey, Frances. Thanks for joining. Can you hear me? Thank you. Where are you from, by the way? Happy Sunday, everyone. Happy Mother's Day to everyone, your biological mother or your mother figure. From Belgium. Thanks, Phoenix, for joining. Katie from Maine. Katie's back at it. Thanks for joining, and happy Mother's Day to all. We'll give it a few minutes before we begin. I hope you all are having a great Sunday. Yeah, it'd be nice if everyone can just put in the chat where you're watching from and your name. We have a lot to cover today. Phoenix from Colorado Rockies. Very cool. Thank you. It's nice just to know where everyone is from. Oh, Dow is up. Okay, so on the features. In fact, let's take a look at that as well. I like looking at, oh, you're right. It's up 1.3% so far. So thanks, Katie, for that. Okay, so then we'll see how the Asian markets do, but just based on the futures, not features. I can't speak today. Looks like we have expected green. We see S&P features looking good. Yeah, sorry, my voice has been very raspy. I just got finished with dealing with a cold, so just getting back to normal shape. Yeah, so we'll talk about all of that, Francois. Yep, I hope so as well. Things are definitely going to shift gears. I'm not too worried. We see other things going up, but I do suspect that the miners will make a big run back. The miners, tend to have very fast speed. When it runs. Not like these big companies where it takes longer to run up, but we're seeing big time companies going up first. You want a new car? What kind of car are you looking at? A G-Wagon? Or are you looking for a Prius, Mercedes, Hyundai, a SoFi car, a Tesla? All right. Well, a Lexus. I used to have a Lexus as well. Those rides are very smooth. So definitely good quality, good reliability there. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, guys. Well, thank you all for joining. I usually do a live session, once every week, usually on Sundays. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining. Okay, so we barely just got started. So any questions that you have, put it in the chat. I'll definitely cover all the questions. First off, let me just give you a run through on some of the updates I've gathered so far. So it's good seeing Bitcoin going up right now. We even see altcoins moving up very fast. So Dogecoin, Solana, Ethereum up close to 40%. Dogecoin is making a run. This is a key sign for the markets to start running up. And just looking at the the futures, we see S&P, it's up. So come tomorrow, we're gonna have a bull run, and we're in a Bitcoin bull run at this time. And what is driving all of this so far? So Trump, in the last 2 days, we heard about India and Pakistan ceasefire. Trump, he's a mediator. He knows how to make deals. In fact, Zelensky and Putin, they're going to be meeting, and we may very well have this war between Russia and Ukraine come to an end. We've had millions of lives lost, and this is really going to make a difference with confidence, market certainty, and the stock market is really going to roar. In fact, we're hearing a lot more about potential trade deals with China. So, this president is really getting things done. He talks about how the United States is going to enter a golden era. What does that mean? Well, Trump, he announced today that his next truth will be one of the most important and impactful he has ever issued. So what happened when there was the announcement of like crypto and Bitcoin? One day Bitcoin had a godlike candle going up like 10,000 in price. So any type of post from Trump, people react to that. Social media is different now in that any strong leader who puts some type of message delivery conveyed through social media, things can run up very quick. So it'll be interesting to see, what news comes out. We also heard about, just updates with, Bassin, traveling to Switzerland where China is at, in the USA and China, potentially, this is on rumors, to announce 0 to 0 tariff deal tomorrow. If this is true, the global markets are just going to explode. There may just be a big run up with all of that news. But here's an interesting post from the White House that the US announces a China trade deal in Geneva. So we'll let you just take a look at this update. In that, Scott Bessent, he's stating that he's happy to report that the US made substantial progress between us and China in the very important trade talks, just with the overall great deal of productivity. I think there is an agreement in that the US is in a 1.2 trillion trade deficit. So the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs. And we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us toward resolving that national emergency. So we saw a lot of uncertainty, at the beginning of in Q1, it was a bloodbath. Everyone was so fearful. People were like, panic selling and all that. But now everything is coming together. So those who panic sold, I really regret it, because anytime when the market goes down, dips are gifts, and take advantage of that. We've been talking about that as well. It's time in the market, not time in the market. Things will bounce back. Why? Because we have a strong leader that's in the White House right now. Here's a post I want to just highlight. Bitcoin, dessert is temporary. Bitcoin is forever. I don't know if any of you are barely getting new to Bitcoin, whether you're invested in, stocks that are hedging Bitcoin. When you think about it though, Bitcoin, if you don't have any, study it, embrace it, try to get Bitcoin at a small scale, stack sats. Why? Because there's only 21 million. It's forever. This is going to be the digital commodity top asset. So what do I mean by that? Bitcoin is ranked number 5 right now. We have over $2 trillion of money invested into Bitcoin. Bitcoin bypassed silver, Google, Amazon. It'll take about another 30% gain for Bitcoin to, bypass Nvidia and Apple. So once Bitcoin makes an all-time run to 130, 140K, we're going to be right behind Microsoft. And let's say once Bitcoin ramps up to 150K, 200K in this bull cycle top off, we're going to be in front of Microsoft. Think about that. Just put that into perspective for a second. That means come 2025, we're going to have Bitcoin in number 2 rank as a top asset by market cap. Bitcoin is definitely, making its run. It grows by 30% year over year. It's shown that it outruns, it front runs any asset by market cap. And here's the thing. China has been really trying to study the United States strategic Bitcoin reserve strategy. Think about once the United States and the states start buying Bitcoin, this $1 trillion is going to change. At one point, there's going to be, a reallocation of gold certificates. US are trying to do it as well. So that's going to like take away from the market cap from gold and flow into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the safe haven. It's the ultimate hedge towards risk, the fiat money. So that's why Bitcoin is definitely here to stay. And that's why I really encourage all of you to study it, embrace it, because it's definitely going to, change the future. Digital asset policy intelligence. So look at how many states are orange right now. There's only a few states left, like Washington, Nevada. I don't even know why these states are not, embracing Bitcoin to write up a proposal to enact a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But when you look at the race right now, look at it. New Hampshire, they got approval by their state. They enacted Bitcoin into law. They can buy Bitcoin now. Arizona, they enacted Bitcoin into law. So now they can buy Bitcoin. I think next up, we may very well hear Texas be like the next front runner, running in third place to become the next state that officially can start buying Bitcoin. This is really going to drive things up because I think a lot of the Bitcoin miners are saturated in Texas, and there may be some partnership between the government and the miners as soon as Texas becomes a strategic Bitcoin reserve state, in that they can buy Bitcoin with their reserve. So think about the partnership between energy with the miners and Bitcoins being mined at the sites. There may be something going on there. So definitely some huge upside as soon as Texas we get some updates. So that's going to be a big time news that's going to be coming out. All right, so looking at the chat, we have David joining. Thanks for joining, man. Things are definitely looking good. Bitcoin and the miners next week. I definitely agree. We have a lot of positive news coming out. Bitcoin at $104,000. The features are looking good tomorrow. I think we're going to open up very solid with any news from the White House on just what that might mean between the trade deal between China. So people are looking out to see if Trump's going to post anything very soon. But we're looking very solid. So the top 5 hodls of Bitcoin. So we got Strategy, we got Mara, we got 21, the newly created company supported by Cantor Fitzgerald, Tether, SoftBank. We got RIOT Platforms. We'll talk all about that. We got CleanSpark. I think that as Bitcoin makes its run surpassing 200K, what does that mean for the top 5 hodlers? What I mean by that is the companies with the most amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Strategy tomorrow, Saylor posts another post, connect the dots. We may hear like a $20,000 Bitcoin purchase tomorrow, getting close to that Nakamoto number, one Nakamoto, not too far away. Mara getting close to that 50,000 Bitcoin. 21, they're promising, getting up to 42,000. So it's going to be a neck-to-neck race between 21 Capital and Mara. We got RIOT getting close to that 20,000 milestone. And we got CleanSpark, getting close to that 12,000 Bitcoin. One of the key things is, as we see other companies, getting a bigger hodl, like, we hear a lot about MetaPlanet trying to increase their share counts, to buy Bitcoin at the ATM, convertible bonds. They're at the halfway point, 5,000. But these companies are really making a difference right now. It'll only get harder and harder to get even over 10,000 Bitcoin. So these companies have definitely made headway, getting surpassed that 10,000 Bitcoin. Getting to 20,000 Bitcoin is only going to be 2x more difficult. So I definitely do think that these top 5 hodlers will definitely have appreciation with its share price and market capitalization. Why? Because Bitcoin is going to appreciate, and there's more and more companies now that are adopting the Bitcoin treasury. Most of what we see out of these 20 companies, we see a lot of American flags. So definitely US based companies are taking advantage first, which is a key thing, along with like Meta Planet, Japan as the Asian country, taking advantage of, Bitcoin treasury. All right. So David, Mara is my biggest position. It would be life-changing money for me at around 50. Fingers crossed. So we'll definitely cover all of the predictions as well. But definitely some upside with Mara, along with, any of these top 5 hodlers, I think, have big time price movement. So Saylor, he announces, he posts the tracker, the Saylor tracker, connect the dots. I mean, last week he posted too much blue in the Saylor tracker, but now we're gonna see, I think, a big orange dot coming. Why? Anytime when Bitcoin price goes up, that means MSTR share price goes up, and that allows for the company to acquire more Bitcoin by using the ATM, to have more shares available to buy up more Bitcoin. What do I mean by that? So we can think of strategy as, strategy isn't just buying Bitcoin. They're leveraging all that fiat. So think of Michael Saylor as the black hole, and fiat is the fuel. So all that fiat is getting sucked up into that Saylor black hole. Why? Because he tells that compelling story. Everyone believes him. He tells a beautiful story of how the company was about to go out of business like 5 years ago, but he didn't want a slow death or a fast death. Instead, he pivoted. He took risk. He started using his money to buy up Bitcoin. So what did that all result in? Every dollar that gets sucked in, it exits as pure orange power. Now, you think about the monetary alchemy in motion. Now, MSTR is like a Bitcoin refinery with stacks of sats, close to like 600,000 Bitcoins on their treasury. So, converting that low frequency fiat money that we know will just get weaker over the long-term course, and converting that into high frequency solid Bitcoin in which the price will go to millions of dollars. All right, so here's an interesting visual in that, the MSTR share price, we're going to start knocking on to that $500 range door very soon. At one point we saw that happen last year, and then it went back to door number 2 where, Saylor had to open up the door number 2, $200. And then, getting back to that $300, that door open, getting to that $400, that open. So now we're getting to that $500 door. And most of you are wondering, how high can strategy go? So let's talk about technicals of Bitcoin. All right, so we're looking at the 1 minute chart. We just saw some pullback at like 104,000, now to like 103,000. We're still in a good position right now. I think that on the intra 1 minute change, we're staying in that healthy $100,000 range, which is definitely a key indicator. As we scale out on the daily, let's take a look at the daily. We've seen Bitcoin go from like last year from like 40,000 to like 100K. This was a nice consolidation where we saw Bitcoin just go down to that 72,000. We need a breather, right, before it can have a next stair step up. So we're gonna start seeing that next stair step. It's not a matter of if, but I believe it's a when, where we're going to get to that 180, 200K sweet spot for the end of the year 2025. That's where I'm thinking Bitcoin is headed. All right, so let's see what questions you all have in the chat. Okay, so I haven't seen any questions yet, but any questions you have, definitely put in the chat. I'll continue to go through the technicals updates. So we're looking at the weekly chart of strategy. So definitely some nice movement, with the weekly candle. We see green, 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 green. So very similar to what we saw when, the price went from like 114 to 550 in the year 2024. But what happened after that? We saw some huge pullbacks for like many months, close to like half a year, where strategy has been consolidating. The bears have been taking advantage. There's been a lot of shorting going on, but one of the key things that we saw, come like end of March is, the relative strength being hugely oversold. People took a lot of advantage buying in at like low 200s, and now it's been climbing up. Level one, the prior resistance 330, it flipped the switch now as a new support. Now we're getting to that, 440 second level retest resistance. As soon as we climb beyond that stairway and we make that become the new support, we're definitely going to, target that next tier, level three prior resistance. And Bitcoin, let's say if it goes to 200K, 150K in Q2, then, we're definitely going to be somewhere around that 750 range. But I do see strategy, we may very well hit that 4-digit range. In the long term, this company, I do think, held long term, it has the potential for like a 10x gain from here on out, just based on how this company has monopolized the whole entire market. There's no company that can acquire the amount of Bitcoin that strategy has. So if you think about like Berkshire Hathaway, now that we know that, Warren Buffett's going to be stepping down, let's say if the company right now, Berkshire, they converted all the cash, but they have like about $333 billion in cash right now. So if all that money is used to buy Bitcoin, basically that would be like 18% of the available Bitcoin out of the 21 million. Just put that in perspective. That's how big Berkshire Hathaway company is with the amount of cash they have right now. If that does happen, let's say if Meta is now going to be receiving crypto, Tesla is soon going to be receiving crypto, but let's say if Nvidia or like Amazon puts Bitcoin on their treasury, any Mag 7 company, oh man, this puppy will start running up, and it's only going to benefit Bitcoin and strategy. Why? Because that just validates Saylor's whole plan. That's why we have 21 capitals created. As soon as we have a big time company like a Mag 7 buy Bitcoin added to their treasury, man, this puppy is going to fly strategy. So it'll all be a win-win situation as we look at how this company is going to grow. So I also posted a video today around Bitcoin and MicroStrategy prediction and why Bitcoin hedge strategy is on the verge of becoming a trillion-dollar company. Once it becomes a trillion-dollar company, it's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar company at one point, bypassing all of these Mag 7 companies like Amazon, Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, you name it. Strategy is going to be right behind Bitcoin. Why? Because MSTR is the ultimate hedge. They're leveraging Bitcoin, similar to what Fidelity is doing, similar to what BlackRock is doing. They're hodling so much Bitcoin right now, taking that risk. This company is definitely going to keep growing. So when you think about Mag 7's strategy is just going to shoot up. Okay, one stock I want to cover is also Cantor Equity Partners. So CEP hasn't converted to XXI yet. So the CEO is Jack Mallers. So this company, is soon going to be created under the leadership of Jack Mallers. We have Cantor Fitzgerald partnering with 21 Capital, SoftBank, Tether, Bitfinex. So all of these companies are partnering together to really drive value for shareholders. They have very unique KPIs, such as Bitcoin per share. So that's an interesting KPI, as well as Bitcoin return rate. So basically, every share that a shareholder holds on to will appreciate as a result of the company buying more Bitcoin. So the company currently has 31,000 Bitcoin right now. Just looking at 31,500. But as soon as they become 21 Capital, they're gonna have a hodl of like 42,000 Bitcoin. So right behind Mara. This company's stock, I mean, when it opened at $12 per share. The difference with this is that it's a low float stock right now under like SPAC, but once it converts, then the amount of shares available will be much different. We don't know what the MNAV is. We don't know what the deficit is. All of that hasn't been factored in yet. But any company that is leveraging Bitcoin on their balance sheet has definitely upside. It's kind of like new kid on the block. It's like the new shoes where everyone finds it exciting. I do think that Jack Mallers, with his, resume, he's the younger generation, and that's why a lot of people really like this company and the way that he's been branding, 21 Capital. So when we look at the stock price, I mean, it went from like $12 all the way to $60. Of course, with that kind of run up, relative strength being hugely overbought, we'll see some, downward pressure. But we saw that top off of $60 down to like 30, so it dropped by 50%, even though it ran up like 500% from that run up. So everything going up 600%, dropping 50%, you basically lose a big chunk of that investment, because the majority of the investors would be in that range of like $30. So where we are right now with the price, $31, it'll be interesting to see how this moves up. But because there was some recent pullbacks, I do think that it's going to be trending up. We've seen the potential of getting to like 60. So come next week, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing push up even further, with the relative strength increasing. But that's my take. Again, these type of stocks have lots of volatility. All right, so David, what month do you think Bitcoin will peak this cycle? So it's very difficult to say based on forecasts. So like based on the forecast of the 4-year cycle, that's expected somewhere around October, November, just based on the previous historical peak cycles. But everything has changed. The fact that we have governments buying Bitcoin, countries buying Bitcoin, the cycles game may very well change. Everything is different now. So who knows if the cycle will even end or not, right? There's just so much money pumped in right now. Bitcoin ETFs have been created. So when you got more money inflows, the 4-year cycle is something that may very well have a change to, how we look at cycles. So Bybit CEO talked about this as well. But if we follow the Bitcoin cycle, it's going to be somewhere towards like, end of Q3, Q4 is my assessment. All right, so let's take a look at Mara. So Mara, one of the biggest Bitcoin miners out there, they announced record number revenue growth in Q1. That's including the fact that Bitcoin price at the end of March went down. But Q2 is looking very solid. So, last year we had horrible quarterly earnings, and that was all attributed to posting on, just from the prior year. But now Bitcoin price is going up. As we zoom in, we see the price, on the weekly, we see some consistent greens. It dropped down significantly over the last couple of months since November. And, we've been in this bull flag for so long, heavy volatility. There's a lot of bag holders, including myself as well. I'm not gonna lie. But key thing is we're getting, close to that technical crossing the moving average of 50 and 200-day moving average. As soon as we break that, which is somewhere around that tier one $18, I think next week we may very well have Mara break that level one prior resistance of $18. Definitely still undervalued. That's where we're going to start retesting that, level two prior resistance in that $20 range. We've seen Mara hover, above $30 on multiple occurrences. So I think the miner sector is going to be back in action. We're definitely going to see some huge upside. Buying in at the low, congratulations to those who bought at the low 10s, 12s, 14, you name it, definitely going to have huge upside run up. Mara is a big company. Yes, they do have cost expenditures, to support the mining ecosystem. But when you think about it, they have a HODL close to 50,000 Bitcoin on their treasury. So they're loaning out their Bitcoins as well as a way for interest. So this company eventually will continue to grow. Right now, people are like trying to figure out why the price has been taken advantage of. This is because financial institutions are trying to manipulate the price. They're trying to, buy up, stock price at a very low cost. But it's until, the financial institutions feel comfortable with sending the price up. So like you got BlackRock, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, they're buying up loads and loads of stocks like Mara, CleanSpark, Riot right now. This puppy is going to be sending it to the moon. Bitcoin price, let's take a look at Bitcoin price at 103,000. Definitely, I think that Mara, along with the miners, are going to have a big run up. Similar to RIOT Platforms. So RIOT Platforms, the second biggest Bitcoin miner out there with the second biggest HODL. They announced record revenue numbers in Q1 of 2025 as well. Similar deal. We see this heavy pullback with RIOT, along with all the miners that we've seen. There's some miners that have been, moving up much faster, but the big five company HODLs right now are taking a beating, when it comes to the miners, similar to like Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot. But where there's huge beatdowns is where there's going to be potential for a run up. Relative strength is picking up as well. On the weekly, we see consistent green candles. We see a bullish engulf technical indicator here, and price action. Market participants are really going to drive the price up, to get beyond that 50-day simple moving average. We're getting very close to breaking through that. That'll be somewhere around that, that close to that double digit $10 range, which we've saw, Riot achieve over the many months now. All right, so Robbie Rose just joined. So just HODL Mara's market cap is very undervalued, definitely. The miners overall, it's hard to predict which miners are going to outperform. But, if you flip a coin, I think that most of the miners are going to, have a run up. So it's best to just, rely on the HODL miners, the HODL companies. In this case, we look at the HODLers like Strategy, we look at Mara, we look at 21, Riot, CleanSpark. I think these companies are in it to win it. As we look at CleanSpark technicals, so it's, CleanSpark at $9. So as we zoom in here, key thing is CleanSpark just broke that 50-day simple moving average. Definitely a big reversal that we're seeing with CleanSpark already. We've seen what happened with this puppy when it went from like $3 to like, $24, 800% gain within a matter of weeks. We saw that God candle, last year. So because it's been beat down so much, anything can just shoot this share price up. I think that we may very well see that price action break through that 200-day simple moving average, come sometime in May. I definitely do think that May is going to be a big reversal for the miners. So, I would, buckle up, get your seatbelt on, because the miners are going to take off starting next week, is my assessment, after a big beatdown for like CleanSpark and the other miners that we've been, monitoring. All right, so looks like, let's see. So Katie, I know Katie is invested in the CleanSpark. So I know we got investors of Mara as well, David, Robbie. I'm invested into all of these. I definitely do think that there's upside. Um, One of the big things that I think is going to drive up the price of the miners, Bitcoin, strategy, Cantor Fitzgerald, 21 Capital, is because we see this. The evidence is telling us, global game theory is really ramping up. Arizona last week, they rejected the whole approval of getting Bitcoin enacted as a strategic Bitcoin reserve. A week later, what happened? Bam, we got the approval. New Hampshire got the first approval. As soon as we get Texas getting approved, oh man, things are just going to shoot up, when it comes to Bitcoin price. But definitely some huge upside with where we are. I think what's going to be interesting is the announcement from Trump. Everyone is waiting to see when Trump is going to post in regards to like the tariff deal. But we hear about the golden era and all that. So any update we get, from Trump post is going to be closely monitored. Why? Because we're anticipating, a solid uh, week for May for the Wall Street. And what does that mean? When Wall Street gains along with Bitcoin, these company stocks are going to, run up as well. All right. So let's see. Stefan Kern, did you get a look into what Strive are planning? Adam Livingston has a decent video about it. It will be interesting to see how they compare to XXI when they both launch. The dust settles. Yeah, so Adam Livingston, he's a very analytical guy. I know he just created videos on YouTube. He's even written books on Bitcoin and all that. So I haven't really looked so much into Strive, but definitely I'll research more on that. But what's interesting is, you know, Jack Mallers, he's like the new generation for Bitcoin. Saylor, he's on the older side, but you got like Jack Mallers who's young and all that. So he really is looking at it through the lens of like opportunity, creativity, how you can, leverage Bitcoin for future innovation. So more on the older generation of Saylor, he's talking more about like reality, right? So taking that risk. So he's the pioneer for how we look at Bitcoin, but he's solving the problem of the broken system, the traditional fiat system. So we definitely need to have a leader who who uh, who educates us on how he's solving, the biggest problem right now to date with the fiat system. But now that we know that's being solved through, embracing Bitcoin and leveraging Bitcoin as the Bitcoin standard. Now, when you bridge the gap with someone who's young, like Jack Mallers, running the show at 21 Capital, this is really going to just, bridge the gap between how we look at AI and Bitcoin. And I think Jack Mallers, because his family background, he's really going to, bring value to investors. And it's very exciting, which is why I think that, 21 Capital, it has huge upside as well. So thank you guys for all the comments in the chat. And Robbie, being a heavy holder of Mar and Ryan, so Iron, so best of luck there. And let me know what your comments and questions are in the chat. What is everyone holding on to? So how high do you think Bitcoin can go in the year 2025? I agree with you, Katie. Jack, he is a smart guy. I mean, just listening to him talk, I mean, I really like how he explains things as well. And you know, it's kind of like he was using the analogy of like, you're at the hospital and the doctor just diagnosed you and he said, hey, your heart doesn't have a heartbeat. So when you look at risk, volatility is vitality. So definitely something that's always needed in the market in order to make successful wins in this environment. All right, so David is saying 150,000. Katie 180,000. So I'm somewhere around that 180,000, 200,000. I'm following the Tom Lee assessment. He tends to get things right, and of course we're not always right every time, but Bitcoin has the potential to run up. Okay, current price of Bitcoin hovering 103,782. Okay, and then look at this, Solana up, Ethereum. I mean, it was down to like 1,300. Now it's back to like 2,500. 7-day percent change, 37% gain. Okay, and then Robbie Rose, 140K, will start taking profits. That's a good way to look at it. Everyone has a strategy, and I would encourage you, anytime when you can take profits, take profits. Why? Everyone has a strategy. And when you think about 140K, 150K versus 200K, there's going to be a lot of people who have unique strategies. But let's say if you're going for 200K and Bitcoin gets to 150K, we know for sure that Bitcoin will get to 200K at once, but does it mean that Bitcoin will get to like 150K, then it'll retrace down? It might get to 150K and then it'll establish support at 110K, and then people will start complaining, oh, why is Bitcoin going down? But when you think about it, Bitcoin's been trending up. I mean, having a support at 110K, that's going to be beautiful once we see that. But definitely, we're just going to see it trend up. It may hit 140, 150K. It'll drop back down to 110K, and then it'll start climbing back up. So always, just take profits where you can, or just continue stacking sats. Yeah, so Katie, 250, 500K, although it does seem unrealistic. It'll need more time for that to come. So definitely something to also keep in mind. But we know that as we scale out 2030, 4.5 years from now, definitely Bitcoin, I think, it has that run up to like, $1 million. Any way you look at it, Bitcoin is just going to go up in the long-term course. All right, so let's take a look at Bitcoin price. So it's currently hovering at 103,000, looking very solid, stable right now. All right, so is anyone invested in altcoins? Like, what are your thoughts with altcoins? Hopefully, David, any news with Trump, man, this puppy will start running Bitcoin. But I really do think that the miners are going to start, taking action. Miners have just been beaten down so much. What I don't get is, 2024 miners got beat down. 2025 miners got beat down even more. While we see companies like Strategy bouncing back, but without the miners, you won't even have the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I think that. Solana is definitely a good coin as well. I mean, there's going to be ETFs created. I definitely do think American-based coins, Solana, even like SUI, we hear a lot about their technology, XRP, Doge, Doge ETF is going to be coming out and all that. So, we're seeing the altcoins run up. We're seeing Bitcoin run up. all of this is all backed by, a pro Bitcoin administration. So definitely upside as we look at the rest of 2025. But you know what? As we look at just the overall like market for Bitcoin, what happened like from like November to like now? I mean, Bitcoin dropped so much. We were getting so worried, but I hope that you all took advantage, taking dollar cost averaging. I mean, people don't really take advantage of technical analysis, but technical analysis is a real deal sometimes. You know, we always see the bull flag, right? When we got the bull flag, if it's in reverse, then we're in a bear market. But when you see this bull flag being drawn out, it's definitely going to coil up and break out of this bull flag, and we've seen that with Bitcoin. So we're seeing that with MSTR, Cantor Fitzgerald. It's been running up. With Mara, Riot, CleanSpark, it's going to be the same deal. So we see this performance. The reason why Mara, Riot, CleanSpark aren't breaking out yet is because of the Wall Street perspective. But as soon as we get any updates with Wall Street on like trade deals, then we're going to start seeing a very similar performance where we're going to see some God candles come with Mara, Riot, and CleanSpark. And I'm going to tell you, the thing with miners is these things have very fast speed. When these things run, they run very quick. It's not to the level of like like Bitcoin and all that, or like strategy. These miners have a lot more volatility when it runs. Like when you look at CleanSpark, for example, going from like $3 to like $24, that's within a span of like a couple weeks only, going up 800%. You can't see that with companies like Strategy or Bitcoin and all that. And of course, when there's stocks that have that type of volatility, that type of velocity in the performance of how it runs, there's going to be a lot of volatility as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Yeah, I agree with you, David. Just with all of the bad news that has been going around, miner difficulty, cost to mine, all of that. I think as we get past Q1, we're beginning to see record number revenue performance, and that's all because miners are now able to prove to themselves or to the world that they are able to generate profits. And when you think about miner difficulty, right, post halving, supply and demand, it's a real thing when the profit gets cut in half, and that's going to be attributed to an increase in the price of Bitcoin. It gets more scarce. Bitcoin, I don't know if we have any like Pokemon fans here, but um, it's kind of like Bitcoin is like rare candy. So let's take a look at price of Bitcoin at 103,000. So Iron's mining efficiency. So yes, mining efficiency is solid. They are leading the game right now with mining efficiency. Hash rate is increasing. What I like about Iron is they got AI going on as well, HPC AI and Bitcoin, and that's backed up by what Trump says. United States will be a pro Bitcoin powerhouse and AI. So Iron's model is supporting those two variables. You got the A, you got Bitcoin, you got the B, you got AI. So tapping into both the strategies there. And that's why I like, the current price points. I also do think that Riot is going to have a big announcement with an AI customer soon. They have a lot of energy capacity at their facility that they haven't tapped into yet. So any ink deal, this puppy can shoot up. We've seen the price of Riot at one point, going from like $3 all the way to $81. Yes, things are different now, but that doesn't mean that this puppy can't run again. Everything goes through ebbs and flows. So definitely huge opportunity with the miners, which is why we invest in these things. Where there's high risk, high reward. But then again, you know, don't be fearful when the stock can just go down by like so much. All right. So what other questions does anyone have? Or what comments do you have? Like, how high do you think Bitcoin will go by end of Saturday next week? Where we currently are, 103,924 with the features S&P. It's looking like we're, over 1%, which is looking very good. All right, so David with price point of 110K. I really do think that 110K is going to be achievable as we head into the upcoming week with more certainty around tariffs, all of that. Let's take a look to see if there's any news. Yeah, so just with the announcement with India, Pakistan, right? Trump being able to mediate that, tension between those two countries, stopping potential war between those two countries. Also, with the ongoing war with Russia, Ukraine, I mean, potentially ending that war will just make this stock market rocket launch. And the trade deal with China, how the biggest two countries are able to make a deal. I think markets are just going to flow in with money. When you look at it as well, the M2 global money supply has been like going up. That means that there's a lot more money to be injected into like Bitcoin and stocks and all that. So Bitcoin has been following that. And I do think that with Trump, he's already alluding to it. Now is the time to buy stocks and crypto because things are going to rocket launch very soon. So I wouldn't be surprised, if Bitcoin goes to like 150K in like June or even more, and then people are just going to like hit their heads, like question why they didn't buy in and all that. But people could have just bought in at the sub 100K just recently, even at 70K. So definitely study Bitcoin, embrace it, and I think that the top five HODL companies are really going to make a big run up. That strategy, we've been talking about strategy. I do think that in the month of May, we may very well top that prior resistance 550 CEP. Come next week, I think that we may very well break through that $40 range. Mara, I think that we're going to test that level one, get back into the $18. In this upcoming week, we're only like $3 away, and then level two in May. I think breaking through that $20 threshold is very well achievable. RIOT Platforms as well, getting into that double-digit range in the coming week, and get getting back to that routine $12 range before we run back up to that 15. But as let's say Bitcoin gets to 200K, man, this puppy can run 3 to 5x or even more. Along with CleanSpark, let's say Bitcoin goes to 200K, this puppy I think can get to $50. So that's my overall assessment with where we are with the miners, with strategy, with CEP, with Bitcoin. All right, so we've been going live for about close to 55 minutes. So, if there's any last minute questions, I'd love to answer any questions anyone has. But again, just wanted to thank you all for joining, and happy Mother's Day to either your biological mother or your mother figure. Hope you're able to like just be grateful for all moms out there, and I'm grateful for all of you joining, and where we all share or and are able to collaborate our ideas. Just very appreciative with everyone supporting this channel. And if you're new, first off, thank you. I would appreciate hitting the like, subscribing as well. You know, I'm getting close to that 10,000 subscribe milestone. So soon I'm going to get there, you know, and it's all because of everyone's support here. So thank you with wherever you're watching from. And just wanted to, you know, say we're definitely in it to win it. Things are going to look good. And I'll catch you on the next live stream. So I usually make videos every day. So stay up to date with that and take a look at the recent video I posted today. So thank you, everyone. Take care.